Hey everybody, welcome to the Pop Culture SquadCast Live on this Tuesday night, August 20th. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing swell. How you doing, Bob?
I am doing really good. We got back from being at Terrificon this weekend. My wife and I, Sherry, helped out with Hero Initiative. We raised a ton of money, collected a ton of money for the organization, which we love to support. And
Why don't you tell us all? I mean, I know, but some folks might not know what it is that they do because they are vital.
Absolutely. Hero Initiative, if you don't know, and you should, is a nonprofit organization that raises money and then distributes that money to comic book creators in need. Comic book creators are, and this was founded because comic book creators primarily are work for hire freelancers who do not work for a place where they would be able to get a 401k or get a pension or any sort of assisted retirement funding. They are also very likely not on any sort of group medical insurance that they would be a member of because they don't necessarily work for companies. And so people are people, and life comes, and oftentimes, a lot of times, there are people who need help, and they are people who have created amazing things, beautiful things that we all love, that are not supported by the publishers that printed those amazing, beautiful things. And so, we at conventions, there are often you see a bucket. If you go to a Comic-Con, you'll see buckets that are out there that are say Hero Initiative on it at creator tables, and we encourage people to donate whatever they can. You can also go to heroinitiative.org, which I'll put in the comments for people to go there. But heroinitiative.org, you can donate directly there. There are also products that you can buy from Hero Initiative. One of the things that they do is the 100 Project 100 books, and they do these sketch covers of with different themes. Like there's a Wonder Woman one, there's Batman one. It just got announced, I believe today, that there's going to be a Superman Project 100 coming out with a whole bunch of sketch covers from artists that is available for purchase, and the proceeds from that all go to Hero Initiative. So,
You know which one I'm waiting for?
which one?
Dan Parent.
The Dan Parent Superman one?
That would be worth buying, even if you hated Hero Initiative, which would be stupid, but even if you did, it would still be worth buying. All of us know people who have been helped by Hero Initiative. Some of us don't know that we know people who've been helped by them, but they have done such wonderful work for so many people who really needed it and will in the future, to cover the bases that you just mentioned. So, as far as I'm concerned, they are a holy concern.
Oh, absolutely.
We cannot back them enough. I don't charge for autographs. Sadly, Neil Adams is dead, so when I go to Baltimore, he doesn't lecture me anymore. But I will for Hero. We have a little bucket out there, and if they, I ask for a contribution. And I know many other people who feel that pretty much that same way. A lot of people who just, they won't even look at you unless you contribute. And it's a worthy cause. And if you're at a convention and people are hustling money, it's for a good cause, an unnecessary cause. Many of the creators that I just alluded to went on to continue to create great stuff, and they probably wouldn't have been able to without Hero Initiative.
Absolutely. So one of the things that's important about Hero Initiative, well, in relation to we were at Terrificon this weekend, and so for a very long time, Walter and Louise Simonson did not ask for anything for their signatures, and they have a reams full of work that they have compiled through their amazing careers. They do now request a donation to Hero Initiative for their signatures, and Walter was doing sketches, and so Sherry, my wife, was there, managing his line, and we did really great. I mean, we raised quite a bit of money, and was very happy. Sherry and I will be at GalaxyCon Columbus in the first weekend in December, running the booth out there for Hero Initiative as well. So
Columbus says in the one in Ohio.
In Ohio, yes.
Ooh, I haven't been there in years.
Oh, I'm just saying we're going to be there for Hero.
So that sounds cool. That sounds great.
And it was great. It was a lot of fun. There's been some news in the world of comics today, and we have a guest in the green room. We are excited to get him on. He's going to probably be in. We're going to be in a short while, but Greg Lockard is going to be here. We're going to talk about his work. We're going to talk about comics. We're going to talk about the world. We're going to talk about how he made me cry today. So we'll do that. I want to touch on a little bit of the world and how it relates to what's on Pop Culture Squad right now. Your article this week, Brainiac on Banjo, that was published yesterday, kind of brought you back to 56 years ago, where you were in Chicago.
Yeah. Not just me. I've gotten...
Just, I was not even remotely born.
I understand that. And that's a good excuse. We're accepting that.
Okay.
But a lot of my friends who were around in those days have commented on that column. So for me, it's been an interesting historical perspective, but also just a wonderful, reuniting of people from my past. Plus, I got to sneak some Skip Williamson art onto the site, so I'm happy.
Yes, well, you can go to the comment section and you can get to the article. But I want you to talk just a little bit. One of the things you kind of mentioned and alluded to in the piece is how there's some comments and some discussion over the fact that this Democratic National Convention in Chicago is expected to have some significant amount of protesting, and how equating the protesting that we have today to what you were protesting in 1968 are not the same.
No, it's more scattered today, and there's nowhere near the number of demonstrators. For one thing, that they're letting them demonstrate, but they're penned up in an area a couple blocks away, and they're pissed about that, and I don't blame them. The MAGA people don't seem to have really shown up in force yet, and I'm not sure they have a force to show up in. The pro-Palestinian people are there, and they're very, their presence is very strong. I think
that's the primary group of people, trying to make a stand or trying to make a point.
Yeah, at least they have the guts to show up, which is more than I can say for MAGA.
But I just listed. We have history lessons on Pop Culture Squad, and the point you and your colleagues and friends were making in 1968 is interesting, because those kinds of things would almost, it feels like that. I want you to explain it. Actually, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What was it that you guys were talking about?
Well, what we had in 1968, and we had it long before, we still have it to a certain extent today, is a government who will just do horrible, horrible things and not listen to anybody about not doing horrible, horrible things. The phrase was, you can't fight City Hall. And I suspect that even though we proved, as have others over the many years, that you can fight City Hall, and if you do fight City Hall, sometimes you can even win. our culture has changed, and it's one of the reasons why Mr. Trump is so popular amongst a large group of people, because people don't want to have that type of control or input. They don't want a democracy. Well, in a democracy, everybody's voice should be heard. Doesn't mean you have to hear it all the time, and you, as the listener, have an option to not. But people who have something to say have a right to be heard, and that is compelling. A convention is a political convention is a good place for it. One in Chicago, well, there was that 68 thing, so it's almost become like a thing. And that's fine. If we're inspiring another generation to stand up for themselves, and we are, it's very clear the young folk today are wonderful, and they are not taking this shit. By and large. I mean, they're not taking this shit. And I feel great every time I see that. I feel terrific. I don't even care as long as you're not like running people over with your car, which has happened about 6 years ago. I think it's important for everybody to have that voice. And if they take it away from one group, they can, will, and probably have taken it away from another. So if you don't stand up for other people's rights as well, you are losing your own. You're sacrificing your own.
Yeah, I agree. It's an important time, and we are here. Thank you, anybody who is watching us tonight, because the convention, Democratic National Convention, is going on. There's going to be presidents, first ladies, and senators talking tonight. It's been inspiring, and we're going to get into that. I think I want to hold on some of that till we get our guest on, because I want to touch on some of that in certain ways.
Yesterday, at the opening of Stephen Colbert's show, which was live from Chicago, and Stephen used to live in Chicago for quite some time, actually. His pre-filmed opening, managed to cover about a half a dozen of my favorite restaurants. I cannot begin to tell you. I have this Italian Beef Jones going every time I don't have an Italian beef sandwich.
I understand.
And there's they had like 4 or 5 of them on there. They had a couple on the Daily Show. So right now I'm jonesing for.
We got less than a month before you can get some Italian beef.
I have 2-3 weeks. I'll be in Chicago.
Yes.
Like the middle of September. Nothing in public. Well, I hope. And going to see a lot of our friends out there, and that's always wonderful, because I'm still part of that Chicago comics community.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to hearing how it goes. Unfortunately, I can't make it this time because it's in the middle of like 3 different things going on here, but we'll figure it out how to go again.
You have been to one of those unbelievable lunches that we have,
and we will get that going.
I'm trying not to name drop, because I'm just up for that change. But,
well, I will tell you, I had dinner on Friday night with one of the people who we had lunch with.
Who's that?
Gene Ha.
Oh yes, Gene was out there.
Yes.
Yeah, Gene's a great guy.
He is a great guy.
And more often than not, when we're together at these little lunches, he and I just sort of sit next to each other and just babble and don't listen to the people who I can't hear anyway, because I'm
right.
Deaf.
Sure. So besides the convention going on, there's other news in the world of comics today. There is I want to put this one up actually first. So there was some news about a new company just starting. We don't have really any details. However, like this group of guys, creators, people involved in comics, I would love to see what they have to do. So a new company is being formed. Um, Eric Gitter, who's a producer, TV producer, has put together these guys to make some comics, which are from left to right. It is Jamie Rich, Jeremy Hahn, and Philip Sabiak or Sablik. I'm sorry, sorry, Philip, but I'm excited to see these people make some stuff.
I'm excited to see everybody doing this.
Yes.
These people as well. But how many new publishers have been announced since the beginning?
Quite
of
a few. Quite a few. And I hope something. I hope we get good stuff from it. It's pretty much that.
Odds are we will, because most of these startups, I think all of them, incorporate some really good talent.
Yes.
And as we've seen lately, meaning the last 5 years or so, the creator-owned stuff, the creator-created stuff, as opposed to the corporate-owned stuff, is absolutely wonderful. And while DC and Marvel keep on changing their minds about who their characters are and what they want to do with them, these folks are out there slaving away at their own stuff, taking on all of the risk.
Yep.
In order to tell their stories. You better believe those stories are good, heartfelt, well considered.
I agree.
So I'm a big fan of all of this. I do think that I don't think people are going to care about who the publisher is anymore. And that's a good thing, because the last book you bought, and I realize I'm now talking to a small segment of our viewership, but the last book you bought, you didn't buy it because it was published by Viking Press. You bought it because you like the author and the concept sounds good. And comics should be on that same level.
Yeah, I agree. This, I think you're going to be excited about this. I don't know if you've heard, but Mad Cave is expanding into Japanese manga with a new Nakama Press imprint that was announced today as well.
And Nakama stands for or means something.
Colleague and friend.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's nice.
So what I see is that Nakama Press is setting out to be a beacon of diversity in the comics world. Excuse me. With primary focus on Japanese manga, the imprint is not limiting itself to just one form of Asian comics. It's carving out a significant space for Chinese, French, and Korean also comics. So this is good. We want more experience. We want things to happen. That's one of the things that was, I don't know, one of the things really interesting about the Mad Cave Amazing Comics imprint, which is Joe Quesada's, is that it's a joint partnership with a Danish group so that those comics will automatically be published in Europe as well.
That's great. That's great. Good. That's always tough. It used to be that publishers would just send their film out to various foreign publishers, and maybe they'd see some money. The creators probably usually didn't, but you never knew, and there was no way of tracking that stuff. And every once in a while, like when we were at First Comics, a creator would say to me, "Hey, here's this comic book in Korean or whatever, and where's my check?" To which I would respond, "We did not know about this book."
Right.
That happened a lot, and it's nice to see those times are changing.
I want to talk about one more thing before we get our guest in, because I really want to talk to him. But this was something that was announced this week, over the past week, because the DC November solicits are all the way out. And there's a couple of books I think you might be interested in.
Yep.
Are those them?
Actually, if that was one book.
Oh, can you imagine that?
That would be so cool. But Yes, the Question. I mean, Question's a great character, and obviously both Question and Black Canary are very dear to my heart. I'm very proud of the work that we all did up with both of those characters. And it's comics and it's DC Comics, so it's like these characters stay around even if the people who made them great are gone. Here's an opportunity for other people to be great and also to put their mark on. So those two characters have a terrific pedigree.
Right. The characters do, and the people writing, and I'm sorry, people creating these books are also great and friends of ours.
Absolutely.
The All Along the Watchtower, which is the Question book, written by Alex Segura with art by Cian Tormey. I hope I'm saying that right. I apologize if I'm not. And the Black Canary book is.
Yes, I just saw that today.
Yeah. Look at this cover.
Yeah.
It is written by Tom King with art by Ryan Sook, and it is a fight between her and Lady Shiva, and looks like a heck of a battle.
It does. It's projects like this, and in this case, both the Question and Black Canary, that make me miss my old spellmate Denny O'Neil all the more. And because he remade those characters, and those are the versions that we see today with Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And to see such good talent, taking a crack at it, that takes guts. That takes amazing guts. It's like everybody who's ever worked on Flash Gordon, newspaper strips and the comic books alike, walking in the shadow of Alex Raymond. Well, good luck with that. But there were so many people who rose to that challenge and continue to rise to that challenge. So I'm actually very happy about this. Some people say, "Well, how do you feel about this Question thing?" I feel great.
Well, I knew you'd be there. I know you'd be happy about it. And if anybody who knows you would know that you'd be wanting to see more people play with it, especially people that are talented and have good sense of how to make comics.
Knowing they're talented, extremely talented in these cases, give me this energy to look forward. And that looking forward to a comic book, that's what we were all doing when we were 11 years old and looking at the house ads in the comic books. It's like, oh, this comes out in 2 weeks. Oh, that's great. So I'm getting some of that going right now.
That's awesome. I'm excited for it. There's more to talk about. Make sure you tune in to popculturesquad.com because we will try and keep you up to date on whatever's coming up. And tune in next week. We will be here next week, so we'll give you even more. But before we get too much further down the road, I want to bring our guest in. He is a supremely talented being. He is broken into comics as an editor. He has edited some amazing things. He has continued to do that. He continues to edit, but he's broken into the world of writing comics. He has written some shorts, but he has 2 really, really excellent graphic novels, and we're going to talk about them. One of them just came out. He's been nominated for a GLAAD Media Award, and I want to bring in to the show Greg Lockard. Hey, Greg, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love that intro. Hi, Mike.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I thank you for doing that. I often, a lot of times, I'm like, do you know each other? Like, I have to do this. We've met before, Greg, and I appreciate it. But let's talk first of all. Anybody who's watching, please, go into the comments because you'll see a link to Greg's Substack. So keep up to date with him there. I'm gonna put that in the comments. But I want to talk. I want to talk about if we can, let's talk about Trick Pony because it just came out in print in June. Is that right? Yes.
Yes, June 18th. Yeah,
So
almost 2 months.
the solicit is that it is a LGBTQA plus fantasy tale of a washed up rodeo star heading home to visit his father in the hospital. And while on the road, he confronts the mistakes of his past, and the monsters of his present. A beautiful story that blends together themes of second chances, magical realism, queer romance, and fantasy. I was thinking about how I would describe it in my words, and it is beautiful. It's and surreal, and it tells a beautiful story of lost love. Like it's this coming to terms with loss and in multiple phases of the main character's life, whether it's his career, the loves that he's lost, and what's going on with his family, and what inspired that book?
Robert Redford in The Electric Horseman.
That is
Really?
super relatable.
Yeah.
I understand that completely.
Yeah,
That's
it was, that. Yeah, right. It's a great movie. It's a great costume, and they have a costume design, and
Sure.
it's Jane Fonda too. So it's two of the best ever. So yeah, I've always like drawn to cowboy stuff and Western music, and I think it's like just such a massive part of American culture, but is sort of exclusionary in some ways, and specifically like gay stories and queer stories are usually traumatic, or so this was a chance to do a story and just kind of lean into the showmanship of that Redford movie, and kind of riff on that, and let it be sad, like you said, but also like joyous that Jimmy's yes. yes, that, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so like a different still was like saved on my computer for approximately 10 years. Until Mr. Chip Mosier said, "What's next?" after Liebestrasse, and I gave him a one sheet with very little story, and he said, "Okay." So yeah, it was just a chance to do like a Western that was inclusive, and the story wasn't about Jimmy, the lead character, is coming out, and it maybe is sort of like an idealized American Southwest, so that traumas and racism and homophobia and all that stuff are not present. So yeah, the magic realism and escapism of it was sort of just a kind of twist to embrace the comic book.
And I love that about it.
Medium.
I love that there was that wasn't different from Liebestrasse, where that's a lot. A lot of the prejudice is a big part of that. This was just fine. This is just everyone. It was very accepting. His sexual orientation has nothing to do with. It was just accepted, and we just moved on to the other story that was being there. It wasn't part of the story. It just was, and that was really great.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question here, Craig. Do you find a greater acceptance amongst the cis community of queer stories today than 5 years ago?
Definitely.
Yeah.
What do you? I think That's a great question. I see it generational. I think because I go to a lot of the creators I work with, and the shows we go to. It just the younger generation just gets it, and I think they're more advanced. They're advancing faster than even like we are. So like the acceptance isn't even just gay or straight binaries now. They're past
So
this, and like the younger kids. Yeah, it's really. I mean, it's really cool. If I feel like a dinosaur, I think that's really good news.
Sure.
one
I
of the
mean,
things that always bothered me, and this is true of just human nature, I guess, is that when you do a story or certainly a graphic novel that is built around one of the other groups, the others, which I love. I love the term. People see it from that perspective. And the younger readers now automatically see it from a storytelling perspective, not from that political perspective, which is wonderful because, I mean, I wear my politics on my sleeve, and I think I have it tattooed on my chest, but we're storytellers. That's our job.
Yeah. And I think like smarter writers than me have said it better, but like if it feels hyper personal, people can find more. It becomes more alive to people, and they have a chance to see themselves in the story. And I hope Trick Pony and all my writing like leaves enough abstraction that people can insert themselves and
one
feel
of the
with the
things
characters.
that really overwhelmed me was I went to see the first Wonder Woman movie with my daughter, who was raised on Wonder Woman comics, among many others. And at the end, we went out in the lobby, and there were all these mothers and all of their daughters. They brought their daughters to see Wonder Woman, and you can watch them in the theater with their eyes like that huge, going like, "Look at that! There's this woman on the screen." And now with all of the nonsense about, kids aren't gay and the whole transsexual fear amongst a group of our citizenry, it's nice to see normalcy. It's nice to see. Normalcy is almost a privilege. You have to earn it, and that's the purpose of political movements. So my hat's off to you, Greg.
Oh, thank you. And that's a good parent that can recognize like others' joy too. You know what I mean? Like that's how kids, grow up better than we did. Like that's pretty powerful.
That's the goal. You make them better.
Yeah. We're all hopefully works in progress.
That's right.
Yeah.
Work in progress. That's it.
Yeah.
So I want to get to Levi Strauss, and I could spend hours talking to you about that book. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about your history in comics. Like you started out as assistant editor at Vertigo, right? Was that your first job in comics?
Yeah, I mean, technically, I was a summer intern.
Well, everybody was a summer intern.
Right, I know. I used to think I was special, but yeah. I was on the bus from New Jersey to be a summer intern at Vertigo, and it was life-changing experience. Then I actually started in. I didn't get hired as assistant editor. I actually got hired as a coordinator for like ed admin and talent relations. So I got in on like the contract side and the behind the scenes, super behind the scenes stuff.
And then made your way into editing.
Yeah. When the office was starting to move to California and things were reorganizing, I moved up to Vertigo and was assistant to Shelley Bond. and then eventually, as the reorg happened, I was the only surviving assistant and got to work under Karen and Will Dennis and Mark Doyle till the bitter end in New York. Yeah, it was pretty magical.
You know what we think of Vertigo as a wonderful, unique imprint that has a lot of good characters, a lot of great talent. But Vertigo has also produced some of our best editors.
Oh, absolutely.
And they, which means Karen, I guess, but and Shelley certainly, don't get enough credit for that.
No, yeah, I agree.
A lot of great editors, and I admire them.
Yeah,
I agree. When the mothership flew west, you stayed, continued editing, moved over, did a lot of work with Image, and then eventually Comixology as well. And I'm noticing, when I prepare, I didn't notice it until I prepared, and I'm like, oh man, he is Jeff Lemire's editor. Like that's, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. There are plenty of editors who are somebody else's, who are some, creator's editor in certain ways. And what is that relationship like with you and Jeff?
That's a dream. I mean, Jeff, as you probably know, is a sweetheart and like a true professional and super creative, and he is also highly productive and on
Yes.
and is always ahead of schedule. So you really, I was lucky to work with Jeff as an assistant editor first under Mark Doyle on Sweet Tooth, and when Will was leaving the books and he needed a new editor, he thought of me, which was really wonderful. So it's been a few years now. We kind of went through the lockdowns and just quietly. That's the great. There's no. Yeah, it's sort of like it's. I'm happily. It's like a great gig, and there's. Just it's like a quiet support role there. That's really lovely.
Well, you're also the third, member of the credit team on Black Ghost who's been on the show. We've had Alex and Monica, and now you. And that's a great book. I wish that we could get more of that.
I know. I think we the changes at Comixology Originals, I guess.
Yeah. So
we were ready.
But something like that, how that comes together, where you're working with two writers, putting them together, does that invoke your skills a little bit more, or how was that process? And at Comixology Originals, were you involved in putting together teams at all, or would they come to you fully formed?
No, they would usually. It's very Image-like in the pitch process. Sure. So like much like Eric, like Chip would like approve full books basically. Not Trick Pony, excuse me, Black Ghost. Maybe I might have helped a little bit, but I don't think so. And as I'm saying those words, it's like it's Alex Segura. Like, of course, he put together the whole team. He knows everything on Earth. What am I thinking? Yeah, but like Alex and Monica and I had worked on another project outside of comics, and they had formed their like co-writing
on the
collaboration.
Podcast, right? Was on the podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome! I didn't realize you worked on that. That's awesome. That's great.
It was another like behind the scenes thing at like freelance at
Sure.
Yeah. So and then I had known Alex from working at DC, and I have known Monica's one of my oldest friends in comics, from like the zine days. So it was easy. Like for them, like they're both self-sufficient and they're both very good collaborators. So there wasn't any editorial interference really needed besides deadlines. And
well, that's a good gig.
yeah. Everyone trying to out nice each other is really kind of how life should be.
Is that how you
Yeah, it
find
was
it,
a great
Mike? When
game.
you get people who are trying to out nice each other? Are those the books you worked on?
Not always,
How
but
about you, Mike? What is
with
your
Alex and
did you have
Monica,
any
yes.
Mike, did you have anything where it was just I'm just here to along for the ride because it was just great?
Oh, I long for those opportunities. I mean, wow, this is terrific. I don't have to do shit. Go. That doesn't happen very often because, you need another set of eyes. So
True.
that's always a good thing. If your creative team was well picked and creator-owned projects, they pick themselves, corporate-owned projects, it's usually the editor's fault or job, as the case may be. And if your team can work well together, or in the case of certain books, not work well together, but feed off of each other's angst. That happens. That happens. You can have some really good material coming. And no two projects are the same, so even with the same people. So it's fascinating. I have a short attention span too. That probably helps.
Yeah, short memory for me helps too. The grudges don't last this long.
I wish everybody had that opinion. Make things a lot easier.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been thinking about today, I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about it. Is the different ways that comics can be crafted. There's kind of I'm kind of thinking about three avenues, and one is like a written narrative driven direction where the words that are on the page mesh well with the art, kind of like it doesn't really tell one or the other, but it's definitely like there's amazing words put together. And then the other concept is something that's very art narrative driven, where the art just leads the eye, and it really doesn't matter what the words say. Or not. And I'm oversimplifying, but we're simplifying where you just the art leads you through the story. And I think that there are two different ways. And the other one is more where you have like a kind of a gallery. It's just gallery art, and it's just beautiful, and there's a story going along. But do you think that there are different challenges with those two types of styles of how the book is created? Am I wrong? And maybe that doesn't exist. Maybe I'm just making it up in my head. I don't know.
No, I don't think I can picture what you're talking about, but I don't know if it's a product of like the creative process or the styles of the writer and the artist.
Right.
Or
Sure.
like the collaboration, or if it's just like a writer / art, like a cartoonist, writer's artist.
What I'm saying is,
I don't know. That's tricky.
I don't know what causes it, but is there different muscles that get flexed as you do that?
Mm-hmm.
You were going to say something, Mike?
Yeah. I was going to respond to Greg's comment. Sometimes that personality thing, the personality clash, is an important part of the creative process, particularly if both people or everybody involved is willing to keep an open mind. Maybe there is another way of doing this. Maybe there is a better way of doing this. And maybe we can all get to that point together. Comics is a collaborative medium. And it's sequentially collaborative unless you start that process at day one as collaborators. And they all know, everybody involved knows what's going on. And keep people informed. And if they have a problem, they will say so, hopefully. And hopefully they just won't walk. That does happen once in a while. How dare you say that? Boom.
I just feel it feels like there's a different feel, and I will say this. Part of what brought this up is so I'm going to be 100% honest. I read the first 26 pages of Liebestrasse a few years ago. I reread the whole thing today and cried. It made me feel uneasy. It was heartbreaking and beautiful, and I just I want to live with that book forever. But one of the things about it was that there were some lines that were particularly interesting, and some of the words that you put there. One of them was this: and a Berlin that is now forever lost. In the way that the main character is describing what he has lost, but it was such an interesting way that it hit me off the page in the words that you used and the way that you put them together. Because you could have said Berlin that is now lost forever, but putting forever lost first is a very important writing tool. And why did you choose that way?
Poetic dramatics, probably.
Sure, but it made it.
Yeah.
It made that line hit harder.
It establishes an ambiance that you couldn't do otherwise. Well,
It's more than time, right? It's more than just a linear expression of something, of an event happening. It encapsulates the everything around it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for calling that out. That's really, because I mean, the thing that was, the place I was writing from was, Tim and I had started this before Trump's election. The parallels were obviously terrifying for us, and when we settled on this story and what part of that tragic history of World War II and the lead up we wanted to tell, the showing that that queer society and that was there and alive in Berlin and destroyed, first by the Nazis, but then also by the occupation after, because in England and in America it was illegal to be homosexual still after. So I think that's where it comes from, is that place of
In England, the penalties were very severe. In America, you just get lynched. But in England, the justice system was against gay people, and you get sentenced to chemical treatment, for crying out loud. I mean, let's talk about the Nazis for a moment. That's pretty close. We tend to forget that because, we're too busy trying to fix what we got as opposed to what history has. But without understanding our history, we're never going to fix our present.
There was another line that hit me, and it really encapsulates a lot of this. I'm going to give you this one. Everything was briefly perfect.
I like that. That's nice.
And it's perfect at the time. It's the perfect. Listen, I come with notes. Get ready.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, this is great. It's like, I mean, the intro is like going to your own funeral, which I love, but this is fabulous. Thank you. I really appreciate the close read. It's priceless.
I have to tell you that it is. I will forever recommend this book because it is a beautiful love story of people who never intended to fall in love, and and the love became all that they could think of, all that they wanted, and was ripped apart. I don't want to give too many spoils, but that line, it's early in the book, and it very much, foreshadows like, hey, buckle up. This ain't going to be pretty, but enjoy that perfection that you're about to witness. And so I really,
thank you.
Okay, now we're going to spend the next hour saying bad shit about you.
No, I want to. First of all,
yes, I've had this
let
dream
us
before.
let us not eliminate, Tim Fish's art, which is fantastic,
No.
and Lucas Catoni's lettering is fantastic as well. It's wonderful. It's a great book.
Yes.
People should read it. There's something else that struck me, and part of my unease, I think, is we talked early in the show about the fact that the Democratic National Convention is happening tonight, and there's a sense of optimism amongst myself, my friends, I'm assuming both of you, that didn't exist a month ago.
Yes, maybe the sun will come out tomorrow.
Possibly. But I also know, from talking to friends, that the dread of persecution in the queer community is extremely real, and the fear of a Trump victory is terrifying.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that in any way?
More eloquently this way.
Your books could be banned from this, right?
Yeah. I mean, the things he was threatening, or not claiming to have threatened, but his policy, whoever's creating this policy for that idiot. I think people, my friends that are legally married were worried about the marriages. My friends that have adopted or have surrogate children, or any form of child's, family building, all those gay and queer parents are scared, and the trans issues that the men, women, any woman, it's all disgusting.
Sure.
So
trans issues I can kind of understand, although I do not back anything that the Christian nationalists are going to support ever. But that's really mind-boggling for straight people. For people who haven't experienced that or haven't had a loved one who's experienced that, and now that kids are talking about it, talking about themselves, it's getting a little bit easier for families to cope, to understand what's going on. And that's the result of plenty of work and hard work. Mm-hmm. And the fact that all of that and all the other stuff that you mentioned can go down the tubes in 75 days is scary as hell. I've been on this earth way too long, and this is the scariest moment of my life.
That's terrifying to me that you just said that.
I'm sorry. Well, the good news is we might be able to win.
Yeah. No,
let's stay on the positive note.
Yeah,
but we're gonna have to work for it.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
We always are going to have to work for that change, as folks who were subjected to the Roe v. Wade decisions. Change is not guaranteed to stay. You always have to fight for it. You always have to remember to stand up for yourself and for your loved ones, and for our nation.
Yeah. And think beyond yourself too. Yeah, it's
I want to. So we're talking about Liebestrasse. Where, obviously it was before Trump's stuff where you were already working on it, or was it during Trump's time that you started working on it? What made you want to tell this story? As
sorry.
I'm saying, just as your first, major full length story.
Definitely wasn't by choice. If I could go back in time, it's not an easy subject matter, and I can give full credit to Tim. I mean, he gets full credit, but also like pushing me into places I was uncomfortable for sure. But yeah, we had started. Tim had a sketch in one of his notebooks from visiting the camps and then the memorials in Poland. And he had seen, in the memorials when families were listed, it was very obvious who was like the single queer person in those memorials. And so, he was just daydreaming and thinking on that, and had drawn an image of the two men falling into bed and then like the camera pulling out to see the street sign. So that becomes like the first page of that we started with, and we kind of worked from there and created those characters out of that scene that was in Tim's head. So long story longer, that was going to be a zine and a short story, and without a deadline and dealing, and my struggles with the subject matter just took a while. So we started before the Trump election nightmare, but then as we got into it, things started to click around that time too. And then by the time we sold the graphic novel to Comixology Originals, we were already living in his presidency, unfortunately. So yeah, I think I'm sorry, cut me off, please.
To paraphrase Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, with great trauma comes great opportunity. And
unfortunately, that's true.
There are stories that come out of that, and those stories can do a world of good. For one thing, it brings concepts to the minds of people who had never dwelled in those communities or in that subject matter. So it gives them an opportunity, if they're willing to take it, to kind of learn more about what their environment is really like.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to what you were saying, like, in the introduction, in your discussion before I signed on, like that, it was a lot of it is, and it's reflected in the book, like how we sat around and Trump was an abstract, or these issues didn't hit us, and that's how the Germans felt. That the Nazis weren't completely taken seriously, and the parallels, I think, for me were terrifying, and I think a lot of what we tried to represent in the final story was just the sitting around and not being called to action, and not and some of it maybe was inevitable in Germany, but like we have a chance here.
I mean, there is that fact, the inevitability, perhaps from our perspective is there, but as I read it today, as different from 2019 when we were still living in Trump's world, I encourage anybody who hasn't read it to read it now, because it's more. I think it's even more terrifying now. I think it feels because you can put yourself in the world of when we were living through Trump's first presidency. It was very much
don't say first.
Well, okay.
Please.
We were living through Trump's presidency. Yeah. Jason is coming to visit.
Whoa. It's about time we hit the tail here.
Yeah. When we were living there, we didn't really think even when he got elected, as much as we were upset about it, as much as we it wasn't as terrifying as it is today, because we know that he got stuff done, that he made things happen, or his administration or whatever it was things happened, just like things were starting to really happen to the people in Levi Strauss in the book. They were starting to really happen, and it was starting to get to the point where it was out, like you couldn't do anything about it anymore. Like that's the experience that they had, where they had this feeling that they could do something, that if we worked a little bit, maybe we could do something, stop this. We should do something about it. And the fear of a second Trump presidency is that we won't have the opportunity to do anything, because we already know we've lost Roe, we've lost the things that they're promising. They fulfill their promises.
What we learned is that whereas the president may or may not be above the law, the Supreme Court definitely is. And that is a great evil, because no matter how wonderful change comes, those people can stop it. And you look at the folks on the Supreme Court. I think the cat took over Bob's feed.
No, I'm back. I just needed to keep him from coming on my. If I don't move him, he's just going to keep coming right here.
Yeah. I know my door's
stealing the spotlight.
Our cats are not coming on here because they want royalties.
Yeah. So yeah, it's something, and I'm glad you joined us, Greg, because it was something I really wanted to kind of talk about with you, because I think it's I think you come from a perspective that's super important, and that like one of the things that I love about your writing is that it is authentically from your perspective, and I appreciate that in so many ways.
Well, of course,
yeah,
I mean,
that too, right? Yeah, it comes out of me.
Well, again, I love the fact that it's there, that it exists, that we're fine, that that we live in a world where Greg Lockard can write from his perspective.
One of the things that I tried to do at DC in the 70s, I was much more successful at it when I got there, when I went back in the 80s, was to expand the creative base to include greater representation of humanity, racial, gender. And my reason was twofold. It was not political, oddly enough, because everything else I do is. My reason was, first of all, capitalist. If, for example, you're extending comics to women, and the best way to do that is to get women involved, then you're doubling your potential audience. And that's a good thing, doubling your potential audience, And the second is because I wanted to read a wider variety of stories. By the 70s, we had put ourselves into such a tight niche that it was oppressive. That's as Bob knows, that's the reason why I started First Comics. So I'm actually very happy to see the diversity in our medium, a medium that I have enjoyed since I was 2.
Yeah, and and I'm like a product of that then, because it's like every the creators that I glommed onto and made comics safe for me, and a place that I just dreamt of always working in. I might not have cared as deeply, or I wouldn't, and that's what I try to put into the writing and into the editing too. It's like opening things up. I want stories as a reader, just generally. I just want stories that take me places I haven't been before. Exactly. I think that's the coolest part as a reader. So if I can do that for other people, and if I can help other people as an editor do that, that's the greatest gift.
But both as a writer and an editor, that is exactly what you've been doing.
Thank you. I hope.
You've been doing that, and you're not alone.
No.
Which makes it a little less scary.
Well, yeah, you just got to keep. I mean, you got to keep paying it forward. I think, and all
Right.
of the opportunities that were made for me. I'm just very lucky, and you got to just keep going and open the doors instead of pulling up the ladders.
So you kind of talked about it. And we kind of didn't. We're going around this a little bit non-linearly, but like you just said, you always wanted to be part of the comic industry. Why is that? What were the comics that you read that you said I want to be part of that?
I attribute Peter David
Okay.
as being like the first writer I followed, but yeah, around that time of his start to X Factor,
Okay.
I was like, I just remember being aware of the credits boxes at that point, and something clicked, and I was following him, and then made my way. Yeah, I was just following, there's him, and then Grant Morrison and Peter Milligan and Garth Ennis, and I got into some good stuff pretty quickly. Luckily, no one was policing my Vertigo-ness.
I was going to say, it's easy to see why you did so well in Vertigo.
Yeah, I was a super fan. I mean,
if
Peter,
if Marvel ever had a Vertigo book, it was Peter David's X Factor.
That's interesting.
Ooh.
That's a really interesting.
Yeah.
I
mean that. Yeah, what was it? I think it's X Factor 87 where they all go to Doc Samson for like a therapy session, and it's I think it's just brilliant. And
sure.
So I think that, and his Hulk too, like that was
that
epic
was great too.
and really smart, and just a brilliant writer. So he was a great gateway to like superheroes, and then also just like it had a literate bent. It was really, really good starting point. But just following writers and knowing and thinking about like the people in the credits box as like all individuals early, sure. I think like fueled the fire for me.
Was looking towards queer stories something that you do you remember specifically like a moment where you're like, oh, I see myself here in comics? Or were you already was it beyond that?
Yeah, it was. I've admitted this to him, to his face, and to everyone involved, I think. But like Peter Milligan's Enigma, I was convinced that Peter was a queer, at least bisexual man. So for years, until I think I brought it up when I worked at DC. So Enigma was really formative. I've been, and also said this and thanked him to his face, Phil Jimenez dedicating the Tempest miniseries.
So I was going to bring that up.
Was major. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people.
That was I've talked to Phil about that.
Yeah,
I remember reading that live, when it came out, and cried. I thought it was the most amazing thing, and courageous, and I loved it, and I am a straight man, so it wasn't that I see myself as I was moved that people could be their authentic selves, and I think that's super important. But not very many people know. Not many people. That's good, because even a lot of queer people I talk to don't know about that coming out.
Yeah. I mean, got to be a DC nerd to.
It was really important.
Or we have to educate the children better. I got to get out there.
I guess.
And tell them.
The biggest mistake we make as humans is that we think We look at a story and it has gay characters and it's a gay storyline, or it has women characters or black characters, whatever. And we think if you're not in that group, well, this story is not for me. Nonsense.
Sure.
The story is absolutely for you. You and your kind are not the only people on Earth. And by the way, your friends and relatives, check them out.
Yeah. There's always a gay cousin.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
just, what are you doing? Why aren't they telling you? Self-reflect. Yeah, and I think, well, like, Bob, to your point, like, yeah, but you know what love is, and like you could recognize the deep
Sure.
love.
I'm
And
not
that's
saying
special.
I'm
Some
not
people
saying
can't. Yeah, some people would block it.
there's
or not.
plenty of queer people in my family.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that I would be opposed to that. And but like that meant a lot to me. It also meant similarly on the same type of thing. And I've talked about this before. So please forgive me. But the first time that I read, when I was reading ElfQuest for the first time many years ago, and it was the first time I noticed that there was, and this was like 83, 84 or something like that, that there was a woman who wrote and drew this comic.
Yes.
And that meant so much to me. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I want to read more of this. And so, yeah. And I love the fact. I love the fact that was that way. I want, as Mike said, more voices, more perspective, more experience, more lived experience to have the opportunity. There are some great books out there that have creative teams that didn't exist 40 years ago. They would never get a shot, and they're award winning.
Yep. And also people who wrote and drew some of those books in the 40s, for example, we didn't understand where they were coming from because people didn't talk about that. You didn't see black characters at all. Women were very typecast, even in books written by women, because that was the nature of the beast at the time. We have fought hard to crack that door and to open that door wider and wider and keep it open. And that's what we're doing today, because we can hear that door slam. You always have to have that philosophy. I want a variety of stories. That's the best reason to like humanity. Because we are different, because we all have our own perspectives. This is my most political show yet, isn't it?
I was hoping it would be.
I love that. I'm honored.
I was hoping it would be. I figured we would get there because it's just the time that we're in right now. Like I said, convention going on tonight. So thank you everybody who's watching and us instead of the Democratic National Convention.
Except we're up against Barack Obama.
I'm hoping he goes later. That's my thought is we're gonna be done and then we can run and hit that. If not, we're available on YouTube. Come back later if you need to come back. You can watch it.
I'm just as interested in Michelle.
I'm actually more interested in what
she's
Michelle.
Such a great speaker, and she didn't want to get into it in the first place. And I know where she grew up. I being a Chicagoan, I know that area very, very well. There's a great history there, and it's wonderful for her to be able to bring those experiences to us. To us, meaning people who are not women, not black. Which certainly is me. I'm not black. I'm not a woman, I think. And you'll learn from this, but you also get some great stories. That's how we learn.
Yeah.
Since we're talking pop culture, what are you consuming that you would like to highlight in terms of pop culture? What have you seen or watched or read or or listening to lately that you think is really cool out there? Or is it something that's not public?
I don't. I'm. My comic books are pretty limited right now to books I'm working on as an editor, or
Absolutely.
like books friends have worked on, and I am behind on all my reading constantly.
I have long
Um,
boxes of to be read lists.
yeah, I mean that's the joy of being a reader too. Is like that stack is so satisfying and slightly unnerving at the same time. So
When you
it
make a dent,
hopefully
it's
forges
so
ahead.
satisfying.
Mhm.
I have no idea how many unread comics are on my iPad. And by the way, I blame that all on Chip. So
We can blame a lot of things on Chip, but I wish. Hopefully, he's watching to hear that too. So yeah, so I'm currently reading Miranda July's On All Fours, like the novel,
Mhm.
and I'm currently watching like a lot of old movies as research that I am hesitant to jinx the pitch that they are attached to. Will Dennis.
ah,
Uh, I
Oh,
might have
there we
seen Will
go.
this weekend. He definitely
Oh
said
yeah, I saw the
he might have said
Instagram.
he was going to definitely be here to
Oh,
give you
it's the
shit. So there
best.
you go.
Well, I'll tease that he is attached to that pitch loosely.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully, not loosely. Please God, Will. You're my lifeboat. Um, so yeah, and then like my like relaxing TV is pretty much like real garbage reality show stuff just to shut down my brain. So, but that, I mean, I guess that kind of speaks to like the Liebestrasse, like Trick Pony and Liebestrasse, and like the places I'm looking are sort of throwbacks, I guess, and
Sure.
getting my money's worth of my library card and my Criterion channel subscription is kind of
So
why I'm kind of time unstuck, or yeah, time stuck maybe.
I want to say that both of these particular books are do not take place in 21st century New Jersey, New York area, right? How much research did you do, and how did you do that where you could create worlds that, I mean, I don't know them, I haven't been to those places, but they feel real. They feel like they're properly crafted. How much of that, and how hard was that for you?
It was, I mean, Liebestrasse was very hard. But luckily, Tim and I were just talking about that this weekend at a panel at FlameCon, which is not as cool as Mohegan Sun, terrific con, but
Listen,
it's
I'm
cool in
sorry.
different ways.
I'm sorry that they were on the same weekend because I love FlameCon. And I think
me
Yeah.
too. I wanted to go to FlameCon this weekend, this past
Oh,
week,
yeah.
and I couldn't make it.
I mean, it's truly a beautiful con. It is like a throwback to like the cons of yesteryear, where it's like a hotel ballroom,
Mhm.
and it does feel like, I always compare it to like queer prom, but like it just is a safe space, and it
Well, to be honest with you, that's
yeah,
where I
it's
ran
just
into
beautiful.
Phil.
Yeah.
That's where I ran into Phil. And
Ah,
just like in the aisles, he was walking, and I'm like, "Hang on, I gotta tell
yeah.
you this."
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, and I was just texting with Phil. I'm gonna try to see him soon, up in P Town. But yeah, the research. So Tim and I, yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not a Tim and I both admittedly are not like massive history buffs, and we both have said publicly that it was probably one of our worst subjects. But like in hindsight, I was a big literary nerd, and all that is period pieces and old stuff, and so it's like
Sure.
it was hiding there. It just was like, so it was finding, yeah, so then that sort of, just to explain, where like we had to find the hook of like the love story. And then for me, a lot of it, there was a lot of nonfiction I was reading. Uh, there's a book called Gay Berlin by a professor, Robert Beachy, that was like sort of the Rosetta Stone, I guess, and from there, that bibliography, the stuff I was reading, built out of that, and then just films of the period. The beginning. It's bookended by the 50s, and then the middle section is in Berlin in 35, 36, 37. So films about that period that were not necessarily queer. I mean, very few of them were. And there wasn't a ton of photo reference for Tim and the costume building and stuff, but we try, but making it alive was really important to both of us, I think, because first off, we're not German, and we wanted to be true to the non-Nazis and capture that society that was there, and that was really important and really nerve-wracking throughout because we were just kind of running into this. So it was a great experience as a writer, and Tim and I are old friends, like Monica Gallagher, going way back 20 years to when we were both in preschool. So there's a friendship and there's a shorthand there that was, I think, really important, and I think it shows in the final work where I think, and I'm biased, but Tim was doing the best work of his really extensive career in self-publishing, and the amount of series and pages he's done, and it was me being coming out of being an editor at Vertigo, which was surrounded by my favorite writers and artists. It really I was like, if this is my one chance at holding this space, I better fucking make it count. And if my mom is watching, I'm sorry, I just cursed.
We've talked about. I mentioned some things. There's a couple of other things that really struck me as I was reading it. That I read things differently today than I did before. I was, kind of inside baseball-ish, but I really enjoyed the bookend mechanism that you used. I thought that, and I said that I had cried, and it was when I got to the end and it was over, and that moment of ending that bookend just devastated me. But also there was another really cool device you used, and I thought, man, that's clever. Very early on, this entire book is in English, and you immediately let everybody know that they're all speaking German, but we're just translating it to English so you can read it, but he's speaking German to them, and I thought that was a really clever device you used there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and speaking of Will, we did talk about that because doing the whole thing in those translation brackets that comic books use would have just gotten clunky after a while. Sure. But so sort of maybe hoping that the reader realizes that they're getting the dubbed version of this.
Yeah, but it was such a great line where you're like, oh yeah, he's like, oh, your German's really good in English, right? Oh yeah, I've tried. I've tried.
Yeah. I mean, that comes from being an American, stumbling through language acquisition and outsiderness in other foreign countries. So the line about the one German says to Sam, you smile too much. That's how he stands out.
Yeah, I love that line too.
I was told that's how, at least in Spain, that's how I broadcasted that I was an American. I was too smiley. I was like, well, yeah, I guess.
I think it plays better in the German response than the Spanish one, even though.
Yeah. The Spaniards, they smile a lot. I don't know what that came from. So, thank you. It was more useful in fictional Germany, for sure. But the anxiety and I think in the research, kind of to what Mike was saying earlier, there wasn't tension obviously between Tim and I, but there was massive tension between Greg and Greg, in producing this, and the anxiety was useful, and I cried at the desk too. So when people cry reading it, they are not alone. yeah, a psychopath at the keyboard writing this whole thing.
Well, of course, we need more psychopaths at keyboard. No question about that. Oh my God. The tension that you have with yourself as a creator is, for many people, certainly for me, what drives you forward. It makes you do new things, or at least try out things, or at least examine things so that you can get your point across the plate better. So that's schizophrenia that we all go through is a healthy thing, at least from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah, good. That's good to hear too, in case my mom is still watching after my curse word. Yeah, no, I think I think
Sorry, Mom.
yeah, it was a processing. There's a lot of processing that goes into the pages and the books, and and I'm grateful for the pushing myself out of my comfort zone that I wouldn't have done without this book, and without Tim. And then like Will, I mean, everyone, like you said, Lucas, on lettering, and Hector on the colors. Like, that's the nice part about comic books, is it's not because I don't think I could write a novel as much as I would love to. I think that's too much alone time and too much, non-collaboration. So I think that's the really cool part about this.
Then you have somebody
sorry.
You have somebody like Jeff who just does it all. There are books where he's written, drawn, lettered, colored, the whole thing, and that's crazy.
He even put the staples in the book. So,
like, I think May's book just all him. I think that's right. I could be wrong. Maybe I think he lettered it though.
Which
May's book?
Oh, yeah. Did he letter it? Oh gosh,
I don't know, but it's close. Maybe he didn't letter it, but he did everything else.
Yeah. He I don't have to know that because I wasn't the editor on that.
It wasn't in your funeral announcement, right? So
no. I mean, maybe it will be for different reasons.
Back in the 60s and 70s, everybody at Charlton lettered their own stuff, or they went to machine lettering,
which is terrible. Horrible. One of the worst things in comics ever. People do not speak in that language. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I feel the same way about Leroy lettering in the EC books. There's no life to it. But the Charlton artists and writers had to letter their own stuff, or they'd starve to death. They needed the extra $1.50 that Charlton would give you for lettering. I know. I know. It's $1.50.
That's fine. Yeah. Oof.
It's crazy. I spent a lot of time this weekend, talking to creators and stuff. When we're talking, inevitably finances come up. And there's this constant, push pull in the world that we live in this crazy industry about how do we make a living at it? How do we be successful in what we're doing? Because there's this economic system that lives outside of the fact that we're making really cool shit here that people should pay money for so that we can all keep doing it, right?
But people don't have the money.
Right.
1 billion comic books are published every week. And a wide variety of some really great stuff. And if you go to the comic store and it's a good comic book store and you don't walk away with 5 or 6 books that week, then you're not paying attention. However, you may not be able to afford 5 or 6 books a week every week.
And there's that.
The publishers, I'm on both sides of this one. The publishers, I understand, they want, their job is to make a profit. Certainly their job is to not lose money. So they need to charge a certain thing to cover their nut. So do the readers. So we have to keep that in mind.
Sure. It's a terrible situation that we're in, because I think that there's this and so I don't know how it compares, but I saw somebody say something like that books that were like when books were 15 cents, if you account for inflation from then to today, that would be like $1.35.
Yeah, that's a meme going around right now.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that's accurate or whatever it is, but it's an interesting concept. Like, number one, people weren't getting paid back then. They weren't. That's why we have things like Hero Initiative. That's why we need things like Hero Initiative,
Right.
because the concept of the freelancers and what people were making on freelancers. The other part is that and it's weird, it's how the economies get away from us. There are so many more people who have access to make comics, and we want to hear their stories, but so many more people making comics means that only so many comics can be made, or if you make more of them, then like back in
I'm sorry.
let me give you a great example. I had a conversation with Howard Chaykin this week, and then it was he answered a question that I had been bothering me. And if you look in like the late 70s and early 80s, like almost every cover at DC was drawn by Gil Kane. Like, he drew so many covers that, and I'm like, I asked him, I'm like, why did he do that? Did he not want to do interiors? He's like, well, he said he had a financial problem that he couldn't afford to do interiors because it took too long and the covers paid more, so he just could do the covers. And so there's that whole concept. Yes, go ahead.
Plus, they had just fired Carmine. Carmine
Right.
just designed almost all the covers. I could schlep out that great Steve Ditko story, but I'll give that one a pass this time. He designed all the covers, whether the artist.
Editor's note: that story is related to first issue special Creeper.
It's one of my favorite stories, but nonetheless, I'll tease it this time. So we have all these artists now who don't have these sketches that they have to draw from, which means they have to work harder, which is fine, and many, if not most, artists preferred that way. But it did, at that moment in time, it created a good opportunity for Gil to save his skin, and that's good.
But again, my point is that there's an equilibrium, I think, and I think we're struggling to stay level, at least, so that everybody can get paid, and we can have more and more people. Like, there's this scale between bringing more people under the tent, getting more different stories, more different authentic experiences, but then making sure that those people can stay here without kicking anybody out.
That's why Disney and Marvel scare the shit out of me with respect to comic books, because they make movies, they make television shows, and they're cheap bastards. Disney in particular is cheap. Warner's just keeps on changing management every 20 minutes. It's really, really hard to be a creator rights advocate in that environment. So, they're all cattle. Artists, writers, they're cattle. We just bring in another one. Stan felt the same way over at Marvel, and he diminished his own work in the process by saying that anybody can write comics, and he firmly believed that.
And diminished.
Yeah, and then who so few of our peers and colleagues can make a living
Right.
this day, and who doesn't have a day job or multiple jobs, or a partner that can that has a more stable job. It's it's pretty apocalyptic.
Where you can get
in
health
terms of-
insurance and
Yeah.
important. It's important and it's hard.
We
You know-
also have an incredibly tight community. That doesn't
True.
pay the rent, but it
No.
does give you the emotional support that you need to make it through the day. And also, you get advice. People say, "Well, this is what worked for me," and then you can consider that. I love the comics community, and I am so proud to have been all this time a part of it because of that. Because people who hate each other. I say this every week. People who hate each other are still on a first name basis.
Yep, that happened to me this
Yes,
weekend. So yep,
unfortunately.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, because my memory's so short, but I can imagine what that feels like. But yeah, no, it's a great community, and I think people are trying to, like Heroes Initiative, and I think, hopefully there's some fight still, and that we can protect each other and build out a better creative community that can support and sustain us all is really important.
We also don't have the polarization. We don't have the polarization of them versus us. We're in the comics business. We're in the comics community. And yeah, there was a period of time when it was like when your options were DC and Marvel, and people would side with one or the other, which I always thought was incredibly stupid and limiting. And the reason why so many publishers went out of business because people wouldn't just sample their stuff. We don't have that dichotomy that everybody else seems to have. I mean, heaven forbid if you're at in Chicago watching a Bears game and they're playing Green Bay, and you say something nice about Green Bay, that could be the last thing you ever say.
It probably has been.
Yeah, I'm sure I wouldn't.
But yeah, I mean, like there's that Mike gives us this analogy often that we exist in like this coffee shop, donut shop. Yeah, and we all are part of it, and there's that aspect to it. But by the same token, it's we do this show because we want we want to talk. First of all, we like to talk to each other. Second of all, we like to talk to people about comics, and we want people to know more about it. We want people to hear these kinds of interesting things that go into the things that get published and produced, because we want more people to be around. We want more people to be interested in these stories that will do everything. I've read comics over the past week that have made me angry, that have made me cry, that have made me laugh, that have given me hope, that have depressed me, and all those different things, all those ways to generate emotion are all completely available within this medium. And
yeah, it's almost like real life. I mean, we didn't have that. We didn't have access to real life until fairly recently. We couldn't put in that emotional stuff because we all thought that we were producing for 8-year-olds.
Yeah, about until like 1983 when First Comics came around.
Thank you. But...
Nice.
Those were not produced.
Yeah. It's like
does my blushing come across? I don't.
Yeah,
so,
we do. Everyone's doing it for the love, and there's no us versus them because none of us are getting rich off this, and
that's right.
Yeah, we're just part of the continuity.
Very few people get into comics because they think this is a career move. They get into comics because they love the medium. Generally speaking, they grew up with it. They may have gone away. They come back. The comics community is a labor of love, and you don't see that as much elsewhere. Little bits here and there. It's what I enjoy the most about all. And it's the conventions where we, it's the fights that we have with each other and the fights that we have together against others, in order to produce great stuff. It's not to take over the world. We're not Doctor Doom. We're trying to produce great stories.
Yeah. I think it's important. What are you looking forward to? And you can use that. I'm leaving it very open-ended. I don't want to put you on the spot, but are there things coming down the pipe that you can talk about? Or is there other things in the world that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm writing. There's one pitch that's like out, but there's a couple in like the crock pot, the slow cooker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that my books come out every 2 years if I'm lucky, so I'm not fighting for too many dollars against my peers and colleagues. $20 every biannually maybe is a good is rhythm for me. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. Like I said, I'm kind of lost in the research right now. And then, yeah, my new day job at Tiny Onion is exciting, is inspiring, kind of to like the point, we were just talking about that. James is building something really special there that is, funded by some of the, that media money and that interest, but is very focused on his comic books, and also since it's not a publisher, it's doing a lot of the back end, behind the scenes stuff, but it's all comics focused.
I'm interested
it's
in
art
that.
Books and
yeah, I like that. I'm interested in that concept of what he's building, because it's a studio. I'm from my perspective trying to get my head around it. I view it as a studio that has multiple delivery mechanisms or delivery, right? And so it doesn't belong. It's not a Boom book. It's not a Dark Horse book. It's not an Image book. It's all of those things. It's a Tiny Onion book that goes wherever that particular story, belongs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that comes out of his creator-owned books, being in those different silos with Dark Horse and Image and Boom, and now Distillery. He wants to, and all the internal people are focused on those books, but then we're building out beyond that, hopefully to support other people, and support those publishers. If like Image, or if we can take on stuff. Distillery is who we're currently and publicly most working with, and because they don't have an in-house production team.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what we do is production for them right now, and some editorial for them, and the community stuff. That's where I think James recognized in me, which was really special, that I too like to sit around and talk about comics and talk with creators, and that goes back to like my beginnings at DC with Jack Mahan in the ed admin department, and then later talent relations. I got to do the fun jobs. I got to go to the green room in San Diego. I got to stand at the door at the talent party in New York, which might be boring to some people, but was a thrill to me, like that fun stuff, that community stuff, the shows, the portfolio reviews, and the scouting of it all is really, I think, exciting to me.
As creators are having gotten away from the 9-to-5 publisher model, you work for DC, you work for whomever, has been the greatest thing in comics, as far as I'm concerned. There are, for example, writers who have become so popular and are so good that they can goof off and work with a wide variety of publishers, yourself included. What brought the biggest smile to my face a couple of months ago, I saw the ad for Tom King's Archie comic with Dan Parent. I'm thinking, oh, that's great. You know,
that comes out this week. That comes out tomorrow, I think, or next week.
I think it comes out this next week, I think. But
I think it's next week. It's next week. I thought it was going to be this week, but it is next week. Yeah.
But you know, I mean, he could take a shot like that. That's great, and also work with a publisher with the shortest attention span in the history of Papyrus.
Again, that was a huge topic of conversation this week, particularly the short attention span. But I'm excited about the fact that you're working for Tiny Onion and with James, and I've known James a long time, and I saw him in New York the first year post pandemic, first post-pandemic New York, and we kind of just he and I went up to him and I'm like, how are you doing? And he's like, I'm doing good, and I'm like, yeah, you are. And he gave me a knowing smile, like he's doing amazing things, and I'm so happy for him because he's so talented. Just
yeah, and this is the same as like same sweetheart that I met when he was an intern too. Like he's I'm really impressed by the moves he makes, and he has a lot of us, myself included, don't have like the business brain. Even though I have no excuse with my DC training, but the way he's always like, well, I was around the DC offices. I was like, yeah, but most people don't get it like you do. Like, he's really smart making these decisions, and yeah, I'm really proud of him outside of being his employee.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
So
it's a lucky place to be. Yeah,
stuff going on. Yeah, absolutely. We're excited. We're excited for Distillery. They're one of our favorite, publishers out there, and we're excited for a lot of the things we want. We always talk. We spend a lot of time on the show talking about new publishers or not. We can spend hours talking about Marvel and DC, and there are YouTube shows out there that spend hours talking about Marvel and DC. That's not really. I mean, if there's something interesting, we'll mention it. But like we like to spend more time, calling attention to the people and the people, trying new things. So,
we started the show tonight talking about 56 years ago, and Chip asked me to take him on a tour of Chicago to show him those sites from 1968. We've never gotten around to it. He's a pretty busy guy, and I regret that enormously, but this week in particular. This week it would have been great fun. On the other hand, there's no way you could have gotten me, who now needs a cane to walk around, to actually go to a potential riot zone. I did that before. Got the shit beaten out of me. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Hopefully, no one.
Yeah, I want to go on that tour too.
Type of violence won't exist this weekend or this week. So
true.
Oh, we hope so.
Hopefully, yeah.
Not as much as the tourism bureau, but we hope so.
Yeah. But I want that tour. If Chip ever cashes in, I want in on this tour.
I think it would be great fun, and with every passing day, more and more of it disappears because it's old. Chip, if you're listening, give me a call.
We're running out of time, but Greg, I am so thankful that you were on the show tonight. Thank you so much for being here, and we are looking forward to whatever that pitch is in the moment that you're researching. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. And you're always welcome. So if we have something we want to talk about, you're welcome on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
No,
Really
thank you.
appreciated the opportunity to get to know you. I've enjoyed this immensely. Plus, I've been allowed to pontificate politically, so I'm happy.
Oh, good. No, I in the beginning I was thinking, leave me in the green room. This is better than anything I'm going to bring to the table. So, I mean, thank you. It's really special to be here, and this is a special show. So, I'm really thankful that you invited me, and I will come back anytime.
Great.
Make me write faster, so I have a reason.
All right, there you go.
I promise. I promise that book will be political too, and hopefully make men cry, which is always a nice byproduct of
Sure.
my own tears. If yeah. So I really appreciate it, and thank you. This was really a special chat.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks a lot for being here, Greg.
Thank you.
All right.
So we are going to be back next week on Tuesday, a week from tonight. We have a special guest, and I want to share it with all of you folks. Again, before we get to that though, go into the comments. There's a link to Greg's to his Substack, which is really, really great. If you want to keep up with what's going on with him, make sure you go and check that out because first, it's free. You can become a paid subscriber, but it's also a great way to keep up with him, and he's really great. I'm glad he was here. Next week on Tuesday, we will be having Jerry Ordway on the show, Tuesday the 27th. So if you are not currently subscribed to this channel, make sure you do wherever you're watching it, and you'll get notified when we go live. You can be here for that conversation. I've become friends with Jerry over the last few years, and you've known him since before he was even making comics professionally, I'm sure, so I can't wait to have that conversation next week. He has some new work coming out next week that's pretty interesting, and I want to talk about that. And
he's also one of the greatest living writers and artists, particularly in the art side.
Yeah, he's super awesome. All right, folks. That's pretty much it for tonight. We appreciate you guys being here. You have any final words there, Mike?
My usual weekly deep appreciation for your putting up with our babbling, and my acknowledgement that we have a lot in common. So thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks, folks. We'll see you later.
Take it easy.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do